Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into The Courage to be Disliked. Now, I know the title sounds intense, but The Courage to be Disliked isn't actually a book about making people hate you. Not at all. The Courage to be Disliked is really about how to leave their court entirely. It asks one very cold, very real question. What do you actually do with another person's yes? The Courage to be Disliked, written by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga, puts an absolute blade under our everyday assumptions. Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga didn't just write a psychological guide here. They mapped out the entire architecture of our interpersonal boundaries. So, in this book, we're going to explore exactly how to rethink our own freedom. You probably think the pain you feel in social situations comes from being judged, right? But the habit is actually way softer and honestly a lot more insidious than that. As the book states, you are not tired because they judge you. You are tired because you keep doing their judging for them. Wow, that is an absolute reality slap. The hard part of your day isn't actually other people's dislike. The hard part is that secret deal you made with it. You sit there and think, well, if I stay useful, maybe no one will leave. If I stay agreeable, maybe I can finally rest. You literally rehearse their judgment in your own mind before they even open their mouths. Now, you might call this habit empathy. You might call it care or, being highly attuned to the people around you. But this book names it something entirely different. Approval seeking becomes task theft. It's a cold truth, I know. Rehearsing someone else's judgment isn't kindness at all. It's actually stealing their task while utterly abandoning your own. Think about it. Your act is yours. Their thought is theirs. When you twist yourself into knots trying to manage their reaction, you are stealing a job that belongs solely to them. Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, The Defenses Collapse, also known as the Trauma and Praise Trap. This book isn't structured like your typical self-help list. Instead, it's written as this fascinating philosophical trial. It's a tense dialogue between a highly defensive youth and a very sharp, unrelenting philosopher. And this structure is brilliant, right? Because the youth gets to voice all of our natural defenses before the philosopher systematically dismantles them. The youth in this book sounds exactly like so many of us. He has a case, he deeply believes the past shaped him, that his pain explains him. He basically says, if life wounded me, life owes me a repair. And I want to validate that for a second, because that belief sounds completely sane. Of course you want justice for a wound. Of course you want your relationships to feel safe and reparative. I really wish this weren't true. But we have to look at where that logic leads. If your freedom and your healing are constantly waiting for the room's approval, then your jailer changes every single hour. You're essentially outsourcing your steering wheel to the crowd, turning them into an ever-changing warden based on whatever their current mood happens to be. Let's see how this builds across the dialogue. The book systematically dismantles your most loyal survival plans over 5 nights, literally removing one excuse from the court at a time. First, it collapses our reliance on trauma. Then, it shatters that exhaustingly common belief that life is just one big competition. On the 3rd night, it addresses our deep, deep hunger for recognition. After that, it takes apart self-centered belonging. And finally, it cures this weird worship of the future over the present moment. Piece by piece, the youth and, the reader loses their armor. Now, what's really interesting here is the trap of that 3rd night, recognition. We all like to be praised, right? That's human. But seeking praise actually builds a dangerous vertical hierarchy. The praiser stands above, and the praised stands below. If your worth rises when they clap, it inevitably has to fall when they stop. You're forced to constantly monitor the room's emotional weather just to know that you exist and have value. Praise itself isn't the problem. Needing it as oxygen, that's the trap. And this brilliantly illustrates Part 2, the jurisdictional boundary, marking the edge. We have to pivot away from that vertical ladder and move toward a flatter world, a world where rank and constant approval are not the core bonds of our relationships. We really have to learn where we end and where the rest of the world begins. This brings us to the book's heaviest, honestly most transformative concept, the separation of tasks. Identifying whose task it is and refusing to intrude on the tasks of others. I want you to picture a silent music stand holding a score. It doesn't beg the crowd to like the song. It simply holds the notes. The player tunes to the task, not the applause. Or picture an ancient boundary stone sitting in the sand. It doesn't hate the traveler. It simply marks where one jurisdiction ends and another begins. That is exactly what you must do with your energy. So look, when you set that boundary, people might get upset. That's just a reality. But here is the massive perspective shift. Dislike is not proof that you failed. Dislike is proof a border became visible. The goal of this book is not to make you rude or cold or hard to love. The goal is to accept the risk of clean contact. You can care about people deeply and still refuse to let them hold your steering wheel. You can listen with immense warmth, but you leave their final verdict completely outside your jurisdiction. So the crucial point is exactly what we cover in Part 3, The Flat World: Horizontal Relationships. We have to manage this genuine tension we all face every single day. On one hand, you want self-direction, but on the other, you desperately need belonging. We are social creatures. We don't want to be alone. So how do you navigate wanting to be your own person while still being part of a community? This is the exact dilemma most people are stuck in. A false rebel chooses the self without belonging. They just burn bridges and walk away. A false servant chooses belonging without the self. They just blend in and burn their own identity. This book offers a real third path. It says, do your task and contribute freely to the community, but do it without demanding an emotional receipt. Belonging isn't won by obedience. It's practiced through horizontal, equal relationships. And this horizontal framework applies to what Adlerian psychology calls the 3 life tasks: work, friendship, and love. Work requires contribution. Friendship requires trust. Love requires courage without possession. Chronic people-pleasers inevitably break down in life because they attempt to solve all 3 of these incredibly complex life tasks with just one broken tool: the desperate desire to be liked. You just cannot solve work, friendship, and love just by being agreeable. That is exactly why this distinction is so vital. Applause points inward. It constantly asks, did they see me? Did they like me? And honestly, it just breeds a never-ending hunger. Contribution, on the other hand, points outward. It asks, did I offer what was mine to offer? And it breathes steadiness. True happiness, according to the psychology in this book, isn't a mood prize you get when everyone claps for you. It is the felt worth of contribution among equals. Which brings us to Part 4, the verdict: returning the judgment. We have to look back at the original pain. You were not crushed by judgment alone. You were crushed by taking over judgments, praises, moods, silences, and verdicts that were never yours to carry in the first place. You literally left your own task to manage their court. Freedom begins where approval ends. The courage this book talks about isn't loud, it's not aggressive or combative. It is incredibly precise. It is simply the moment you decide to stop stealing the verdict and start owning your own note on the music stand. So, I want to leave you with a clean, precise action. Name one task that is yours. Then name one judgment to hand back. Think of it right now. Do not attack the judge. Do not flatter the judge. Do not try to become the judge. Simply hand the judge's robe back.
Whose task am I stealing?